The morning Adunni turned 22, there was no celebration. No palm wine, no pounded yam, no aunties pressing coins into her palms and telling her she was becoming a woman. There was only the sound of her mother coughing in the next room, the thin smell of herbs that were running out, and the weight of a family that had been slowly sinking for 3 years, the way a good canoe sinks when too many people climb in without anyone choosing to get out. She had been awake since before the cock crowed. Not because she could not sleep, she was used to not sleeping, but because the healer had come the evening before, looked at her mother, counted his medicines, and then told Adunni quietly at the gate that he could not come again until the bill was paid. The bill was 3 months old. Adunni had smiled and thanked him and then gone behind the compound and stood very still for a long time until the urge to scream passed. Adunni stood at the doorway of their compound and looked out at the village. She could hear Mama Colour's children laughing 3 compounds down. She could smell Ayabos frying akara by the roadside. The world outside their walls was loud and full and completely indifferent. Inside, it was the kind of quiet that sits in your chest like a stone and reminds you, every morning, that you are on your own. She went back inside, ground the last of the herbs, and took the medicine to her mother. Mama Loa was sitting up in bed, her wrapper loose around her shoulders, her eyes carrying that look she had been carrying for months, the look of a woman who knows something she will not say. Not the look of sickness. Something older than sickness. Something that lived behind the sickness and used it as a place to hide. She took the medicine from Adunni's hand. Held it. Then she looked up at her daughter and said, "Whatever happens, Adunni. Whatever comes to this house. You must protect your siblings. Promise me." Adunni frowned. "What do you mean whatever comes?" "Nothing is coming, Mama. Just drink the medicine. Promise me first." "Mama." "Adunni." Her mother's voice cracked on the second syllable. "Please." Adunni looked at her. At the lines grief had drawn on her mother's face. At the hands that had worked every day of her life and were now too weak to wring out a cloth. "I promise," she said. "Now drink." Mama Lo held her gaze a moment longer than necessary. Then she drank. That evening, the messenger came. He was a young boy, no older than 12, wearing a clean white agbada that was too big for his small body. He knocked at the compound gate and handed Adunni a folded letter sealed with red wax. The seal was a double-headed serpent, its 2 mouths open, biting the air on both sides. Adunni had seen that seal once before, on a bag of money her father brought home the year before he died. She had been 16 then. She had not thought about it again until this moment. She turned the letter over. Her full name was written on the outside. Not her nickname, not just Adunni, her full name, including the oriki her grandmother had given her that only the family used. Her hands went still. She looked up, but the boy was already walking away, his white agbada disappearing around the corner of the road. She brought the letter inside. Mama Loo was standing in the hallway. She had not been standing, she had been sitting, but there she was, standing, as if she had been waiting. When she saw the seal, her face did something Adunni had never seen her face do. It closed. Like a door shutting from the inside. "Give it to me," Mama Lo said. "It has my name on it." "Adunni, give it to me." Adunni stepped back. "Mama. Why does Chief Agbohon know my oriki?" The silence that followed was the loudest thing that had ever happened in that house. Adunni opened the letter herself. She read it slowly. Then she read it again. Chief Agbohon, paramount chief of the district, was requesting her hand in marriage. In exchange, every debt her family owed would be cleared before the next market day. Her mother would receive full medical care. Her 2 younger siblings would be enrolled in school, fees paid until they graduated. The family would receive a plot of land at the edge of the eastern farm. All she had to do was arrive at his compound before the new moon. 7 days. She looked at her mother. Did you know he would come? Mama Loa's mouth opened. Closed. Her eyes filled with something that was not surprise. You do not understand. Did you know, Mama? The tears came then, quietly, rolling down her mother's face without a sound. And that silence, that terrible, confirming silence, told Adunni everything she needed to know and nothing she wanted to hear. She went to see Aya Agba the next morning. The old woman lived at the far edge of the village, in a compound full of clay pots and the smell of dried leaves. She had been the village's memory for as long as anyone could remember. If you needed to know what a thing meant, you went to Aya Agba. Adunni sat across from her and told her about the letter. Aya Agba listened without moving. When Adunni finished, the old woman was quiet for a long time. Then she said, Chief Fagbohon does not take wives, my daughter. He takes what is owed. What does that mean? It means a man like that does not offer something for nothing. There is no generosity in that seal. She tapped her own wrist where the serpent seal would have been. When you reach his compound, count his wives. Then count his children. His children. Aya Agba looked at her steadily. A man that rich, without much land, that many servants. Count his children. Then come back and tell me what number you found. Adunni went home and tried to talk herself out of going. She sat with it for 2 days. She watched her mother cough through the night, muffling it in the wrapper so the children would not hear. She watched her brother, Tond, eat a dinner of dry gari and water without complaining because he was 10 years old and had already learned that complaining cost energy he did not have to spare. She watched her sister Sod fall asleep over her schoolbook because they could not afford a reading lamp and Sod refused to stop studying even in the dark, had told Adunni once with complete seriousness, I will read until I cannot see. Then I will read in my head. The girl was 12. She should have been worrying about braiding her hair, not outsmarting poverty. On the 3rd day, Adunni stopped trying to talk herself out of it. But before she went to find Rotemai. He was by the river, doing what he always did in the evenings, sitting on the flat stone they had claimed as theirs since they were teenagers, watching the water move. He heard her footsteps and turned, and the smile that crossed his face was the kind of smile that made her chest hurt because she knew she was about to do something that would change everything and she could not tell him any of it. Could not explain. Could not ask him to understand what she herself was still trying to swallow. You look serious, he said. Sit down. Serious people should always sit. She sat beside him. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small bead bracelet, blue and white, clumsily strung, the knot at the end slightly crooked. I made this. It is not good. Don't laugh. She took it. The beads were uneven. The string was too tight on one end. It was the most beautiful thing she had ever been given. She put it on her wrist without a word and something behind her eyes burned, and she blinked it away before he could see. Adunni. He nudged her shoulder. What is wrong with you today? You have been somewhere else for days. Talk to me. She looked at him. She memorized the line of his jaw, the way his eyebrows pulled together when he was worried, the small scar above his left ear from a mango tree they had climbed when they were 12. She thought about the house he always talked about building. The children he had already named in his head. The ordinary, beautiful, possible future he was so certain was coming for them. You are the best thing in this village, she said. He laughed, uncomfortable. You are frightening me. Stop it. I mean it. I know you mean it, that is why I'm frightened. He looked at her sideways. Tell me what is happening. Nothing, she said. Nothing is happening. She held his hand for a moment, just one moment, the weight of his palm against hers, and then let go. She stood. Go home before it gets too dark. Adunni. Good night, Rotemai. She walked home before he could ask any more questions. She could feel him watching her go. She did not turn around. If she turned around, she would not leave. And if she did not leave, they would not survive the month. She packed that night. Her good wrapper. Her mother's photograph. The bead bracelet she did not take off. She moved through the compound like water, soundless, room to room. She touched Tom's face. She straightened Soda's book, which had fallen from her sleeping hand. She stood in her mother's doorway and listened to the breathing, slow, uneven, but there. Still there. She did not wake her. She told herself she was saving them. She would only understand later, much later, sitting on the other side of everything, that she was also completing something her father had already started without her knowledge or consent. The chief's compound was nothing like she had expected and exactly like she had feared. It was vast. The kind of vast that takes your breath before anything else does. Polished floors that reflected the torchlight. Servants moving soundlessly in every direction. Rich fabric at every doorway, deep reds and golds. And yet, quiet. The kind of quiet that has no business being in a compound this large. She remembered Aya Akbar's words. She counted. 3 wives, seated in a row in the greeting hall, dressed in fine osoak, their hands in their laps. She looked at their faces and found no jealousy there, no rivalry. What she found was something worse. A flatness. Like people who had already used up whatever they had that made them fight. She counted the children. There were none. In a compound this large, this wealthy, this staffed, not one child. Not one sound of a child. Not a toy abandoned in a corner, not a shoe by a doorway, nothing. Chief Fakbohon entered and greeted her with a warmth that was too specific. He called her by her full name. Then he asked after her mother, using her mother's full name, her Oriki, the one even Adunni's own school teachers had never learned. Adunni's skin went cold. She smiled. She sat. She washed. That first night, when the compound was dark and the chief had retired, a hand touched her arm in the darkness of her room. Adunni beat down on the sound that rose in her throat. It was the first wife, Monarchy. Up close, she looked younger than she seemed from a distance, and far more afraid. Listen to me, Monarchy whispered. Do not eat anything from this house. Do not sleep before he does. And when you hear the drum at night, do not go outside. Do you understand me? What drum? What are you? Do you understand me? Yes. But why? Monarchy was gone. The door closed without a sound. In the morning, she sat at the breakfast table as if nothing had happened and did not look at Adunni once. The wedding ceremony came on the 5th night. Griots chanted at the entrance of the compound, but the words they chanted were not Yoruba. They were not any language Adunni had ever heard in the market or in church or in any gathering. They were something older, something with a different weight. The kind of words that feel like they are pulling at the air rather than moving through it. The chief tied the marriage cloth himself, slowly, his fingers working the knot with the precision of someone who had done this many times before. As he pulled the cloth across her wrist, he leaned close and whispered something against her ear. She strained to hear it. She caught nothing but a name, one she did not recognize. One word, heavy as iron. The fire they lit at the ceremony's end burned a color that was not orange. Not red. Something between the two that had no name in any language she knew. The 3 wives watched from their seats and did not clap. That night, Adunni could not sleep. She followed a smell that woke her, old earth and hot iron, down the back hallway of the compound to a small room she had not noticed before. The door was unlocked. She pushed it open. Inside, there were 4 hooks on the wall. On 3 of them hung marriage cloths, the same deep burgundy cloth she now wore on her wrist. But each one was stained black from the hem upward. One was stained to the knee, one to the waist. The third was almost entirely black, only a small strip of burgundy remaining at the very top, near the hook. The fourth hook was empty. On a low wooden shelf below the hook sat 4 calabashes. 3 were sealed with red wax. The fourth was open. Waiting. Adunni stood in that room for a long time. Then she heard a sound behind her. Monarchy stood at the door, and the look on her face was not surprise. It was relief. As if she had been waiting for Adunni to find this room so she would not have to explain it from the beginning. "Sit down," Monarchy said. "There is no gentle way to say what I am going to say." She told it plainly. Every 7 years, Chief Fagbohon took a new wife. Each wife was an offering, given to the spirit he served, a wealth keeper called Omi Age, in exchange for his land, his power, his unbroken fortune. The first 3 wives gave their life force slowly, year by year, the cloth marking how much remained. When the cloth was fully black, what was given could not be returned. The fourth wife was different. The fourth wife did not give slowly. The fourth wife completed the covenant, sealed it all at once. On the new moon, which was 3 nights away. "Why are you still here?" Adunni asked. "If you know all of this, why did you not run?" Monarchy looked at the third cloth on the wall, the one that was almost entirely black. She did not answer. She did not need to. Adunni went back to her room and sat on the floor and breathed. Then she stood up, walked to the compound gate, and tried to leave. Her feet stopped at the boundary. Not because someone grabbed her. Not because a gate was locked. They simply stopped, the way a word stops in your throat before you know it is unspeakable. She tried again. Again. She looked down at the marriage cloth on her wrist. It was warm. Warmer than it had been at the ceremony. Warmer than any cloth had the right to be. A servant sitting near the gate watched her with the flat, patient eyes of someone who had watched this happen before. She went back inside. It was Aya Agba who found out first on the outside. Rotemai had gone to her 2 days after Adunni disappeared, alarmed, certain something was wrong, unable to explain to anyone why he was so certain. He had gone to the compound first. Had knocked. Had been told by a young servant that there was no one by that name living there. He had stood at the gate until the servant closed it in his face. He sat across from Aya Agba, jaw tight, and said, "Tell me what you know." "All of it." Aya Agba looked at him for a long time. Then she said, "Adunni's father made a covenant with that man 20 years ago. He owed Fagbohon a debt he could not pay in money. So he paid it in a promise, his firstborn daughter, to be delivered in the year of the chief's renewal. Adunni's mother knew when her husband made it. She knew when he died. She prayed the chief would forget." A pause. "He does not forget. Men like that do not build empires by forgetting." Rotemai's chair scraped back. "Then we go and get her out. Sit down." Aya Agba, "She is in that compound right now, she went there alone, she does not know." "She knows more than you think." The old woman's voice did not rise. It descended. "And if you walk into that compound with your chest out and your hands empty, you will not come back out. Sit down." Rotemai sat. He pressed his hands together between his knees to stop them from shaking. Aya Agba told him everything Monarchy had once whispered to a market woman who had once told Aya Agba in a prayer meeting, the way dark truths travel through women who are paying attention. Then she reached into the folds of her wrapper and removed a small piece of cloth, old and brown at the edges, covered in markings that were not letters and not numbers but something else entirely. The spirit Omi Age has a true name. If it is spoken by the one being offered, spoken directly, at the altar moment, before the sealing is complete, the offering becomes a color. A spirit cannot consume the one who calls it by name. It must answer. She pressed the cloth into Rotemai's hands. She must say it. Not you. You must only get this to her. 3 nights. Rotemai went to the compound. He stood at the gate and demanded to see his wife, not the chief's wife, he said loudly, his wife, Adunni, who came to this compound under false pretense. Chief Fagbohon came out himself, unhurried, carrying his walking stick, as if a young man shouting at his gate was a minor inconvenience he had learned to absorb. He offered Rotemai water. He said Adunni was happy, adjusting well, would send word when she was ready. His hand landed on Rotemai's shoulder the way a trap closes, gently, completely, with no sound at all. Rotemai looked up at the compound walls. On the second floor, behind a window that was too high and too far, he saw her. Adunni, her hands pressed flat against the glass, her mouth open and making a shape that could have been his name. No sound came through. Her eyes were wide and her face was doing something he had never seen her face do, not once in all the years he had known her. She was afraid, and she was not trying to hide it. He took a step toward the wall. The chief's body moved between them, filling the line of sight, his wide shoulders and expensive cloth blocking the window entirely. "Go home, son," he said pleasantly. "She is well." Rotemai stood there one more moment. Then he turned and walked away, because Aya Agba had said to walk away. Because losing his temper here would cost Adunni more than it cost him. He walked slowly enough that any servant watching would see a man who was leaving. He walked with his hands open at his sides. He did not let them see his face. Rotemai went home. Then he went back to Aya Agba. And together, through a market woman who sold peppers at the compound gate, they got the cloth to Monarchy. Monarchy hid it in Adunni's food tray that evening, wrapped inside a dried leaf, pressed beneath the bowl. Adunni found it at night. She unfolded it under her mat, tilting it toward the thin light from the compound torches outside her window. The name was there, not written in any alphabet she knew, but drawn, each stroke of it deliberate, like a map to somewhere you were not supposed to go. She whispered it once. The marriage cloth on her wrist went cold. She whispered it again. And again. And again. 50 times in the dark, until the shape of it lived in her mouth the way a prayer lives in the mouth of someone who has been saying it their whole life without knowing why. She was ready. The new moon came. The compound transformed with a quiet that was worse than noise. Candles arranged in patterns she now recognized as summoning marks. She had seen the same shapes on the floor of the locked room. The 3 wives were dressed in white, their hair loose, seated in a triangle formation in the center of the main hall. A 4th space was left open between them. The chief dressed in cloth so dark it seemed to swallow the torchlight rather than reflect it. He moved through the compound with the ease of a man who had done this before and found it went smoothly every time. He was not nervous. He had no reason to be nervous. He led Adunni to the 4th space. He smiled at her, the kind of smile that a man gives when he believes the outcome is already settled. He began the incantation. The air in the room changed. It thickened, the way air thickens before a storm, that pressure behind the eyes, that sense of something enormous gathering itself just beyond what you can see. The candles bent sideways without wind. The 3 wives bowed their heads. The chief's voice rose, moving toward the final words. The words that would complete it. The words that would seal her. Adunni waited. She let him reach the very edge of the final line. Then she spoke the name. Not loudly. Clearly. The way you call someone who you know can hear you. The room went cold. Not the cold of night air or open windows, the cold of something ancient and awake, turning its attention toward the sound of its own name being used without permission by someone who should not have known it. The candle stood upright. The thickening in the air reversed, it expanded, suddenly, as if the room had taken a breath. The chief's voice broke. It simply broke, mid-word, like a thread pulled too tight. He looked at Adunni, and for the first time since she had arrived in his compound, his face was wrong. The composure, that careful, assured, practiced composure, cracked from the inside. "Where did you learn that?" he said. Not a question. Never a question. A fracture. She did not answer him. The spirit Omi age did not seal her. She had called it. She was a caller, not an offering. And a spirit, bound by laws older than Chief Fagbohon's covenant, older than his grandfather's ambition, could not consume the one who called it correctly. It had to answer. It had to face the one who had chained it to a man's greed for 7 times 7 years. It turned. Chief Fagbohon made a sound that had no name. He fell. The 3 marriage cloths on the wall of the locked room, she would learn later, because she felt it happen before she saw it, fell from their hooks. The black stain in each one began to recede. Slowly at first, then all at once, like ink dissolving in water, rising upward and fading until the cloths were burgundy again, fully, completely. The calabashes on the shelf cracked open by themselves. The compound wall split down the middle, a single crack running from the roof line to the foundation, the sound of it like a bone. The candles died. Silence. Monarchy made a sound from across the room, not a scream, not a sob. Something between the two. Something that had been held in for years finally finding its way out. Adunni walked out of the compound gate. It opened before her this time. The cloth on her wrist was simply cloth. She found Rotema outside, sitting on the ground with his back against the compound wall, as if he had been there all night. He looked up when he heard the gate. He stood. He said nothing. He just held her, the way you hold someone when all the words you have been rehearsing disappear and all that is left is the fact of them, present and alive and in your arms. She cried then. For the first time since any of this began, she cried. She went home. The land grant was void. The debts were back. The family was exactly as poor as they had been before the letter came. Nothing had materially changed except that they were alive and whole and together. Mama Loa was sitting outside the compound gate in the dark, as if she had not slept. When she saw Adunni's face, she slid from the bench to her knees, just went down like her legs had no more use for standing, and she pressed her forehead to the ground and wept with the broken, ugly sound of a woman who has been holding a sin for 20 years and has finally put it down. "I knew," she said into the earth. "I knew what your father promised. I knew when the letter came. I told myself, that if I said nothing, if I did not name it, it would not come. I am sorry. I am sorry. I am sorry." Adunni stood over her mother for a long time. Then she knelt beside her. She did not say it was fine. It was not fine. She did not say she understood. She was not sure she did. She held her mother's shaking shoulders in the dark and said nothing, because sometimes the most truthful thing you can offer someone is your presence without your absolution. That would come. But not tonight. She stood. She looked at Rotemai, who was standing at the gate with the careful stillness of a man who knows when something does not belong to him. She picked up her wrapper. She walked toward him. She did not look back. Aya Akbar, alone in her compound that night, turned a small sealed calabash over in her hands. It was old, older than the chief's compound, older than any of the agreements that had been made in this village in living memory. She turned it slowly, feeling its weight. Then she looked up, at no one, at the dark, at whatever was listening. She said quietly, Fagbohon had 5 names in his book. 5 covenants. 4 families have been found. She set the calabash down on the shelf in front of her. 1 has not. She did not say whose name it was. She did not need to. Not yet. If this story stayed with you, if you felt every moment of what Adunni carried, then you already know what to do. Leave a comment below and tell me, did you see the mother's betrayal coming, or did it hit you like a stone? Like this video if Adunni's strength gave you chills. And subscribe so you do not miss part 2, because there is a fifth name in that book, and the family it belongs to does not know it yet. The bell is right there. Turn it on. This story is not finished.